as you can tell, a little bit of insomnia here. So I am awake as usual, and it is what, 3:20? I already have my coffee. My sister got me this mug. Ah, look, it's so cute. It says Lucy and Ethel. She's my Ethel. I'm Lucy. Mainly because I'm the one that does the thinking and she's the one that does the kind of the doing, and with the two of us together we get in mischief. So she was my, still is, my rock through a lot, which brings me into the subject I was going to talk about today. So this is a hard subject to talk about because my brother was shot. He was murdered and the suspect still hasn't been found. But I had brought it up on my last video. But his mental illness that he had was caused by the monster. All the abuse that he got, hitting him in the head, things getting slammed into his head, him being thrown into things such as water heaters, things getting beat upside his head, things like that. He had brain injuries, which they didn't discover until later. He had a CAT scan done, and they found trauma. They found trauma on his brain, and it caused some damage in his brain. And my brother, when I said he didn't know how to differentiate reality from fantasy, he literally did not know how to differentiate fantasy from reality. He believed he was an FBI agent. He believed he was part of the federal government. He believed that he was part of the CIA. He believed that he was part of a task force. He believed that he was a police officer, an attorney. You name it, he was it. And there were times that he called one day and told my husband not to go to work because he was put in charge by the governor of Missouri to run the task force to go in and raid all the businesses in Kansas City and arrest all of the illegal aliens. And any business that had an illegal alien, the employees were all going to go down. And he truly believed these things. And in his mind, it was real. You couldn't tell him anything different. And there was no reasoning with him. There was no, and trust me, I tried. You could not do it. I got to a point where I was just like, okay, Josh, I'll let him know. I will do whatever. I'd argue with him about it. There were times that I would just, okay, go along with it. There were times that I would argue with him because it was just so out there that I was like, come on, like, stop, don't, that's way out there. And then there were times where I was just like, if you believe that, then you can believe that. You can't argue with someone with a mental illness because there is no reasoning with someone with a mental illness, because in their brain It's set in their mind. It is as it is. What they believe is set in stone. And what they envision in their mind is reality. That is what they believe. That is what they see. And there is no changing that, because if they had a dream that something happened to them, it was real. It wasn't a dream, it was real. And it actually took place to them, even though it was a dream. And this happened often. And I remember as a child, we had to go to counseling because he was in a institution for a while over things he did. And we had to go to counseling on how to deal with his mental illness. And we had to learn how to cope with his mental illness because of some of the things that he would do. And we had to go through like role playing and all of these different scenarios where the psychologist or the psychiatrist would teach us, like, this is how you need to respond. This is how you need to act. This is when you need to react. This is when you don't need to react. And I just remember sitting through these counseling and just thinking, holy cow, like, this is what we have to deal with the rest of our lives, you know? And just wondering, is he ever going to be able to be normal? And at one point, he was. He was a normal person at one point. He got in a lot of trouble at school all the time. He always created fights, always told everybody that my other brother and I would beat him up. Can you hear my baby, my puppy? My doggy's having a dream. But anyway, he would always start fights in school. He would tell people that, oh yeah, my sister and my brother's gonna beat you up. And people would show up at our house and we'd be like, what? I don't even know you. Like, why are you here? And he would do stuff like that. And I mean, it was crazy. But as he got older, so he met Mandy, and they had a very off and on relationship for a long time. They had their first son, and so she lived with us right after he was born because he dumped her on our doorstep and said, here she is, I don't want her. That was very hard on her, but we loved her to death. So she stayed with us and we took care of her, and she got on her feet and she worked her butt off and she took care of her baby. And amazingly, he thought that because we were taking care of her and she was well, I shouldn't say it that way, because she was living with us and we were helping her out, he thought he could control us. He thought that he could tell us what to do. And he thought he could tell us how to run our household. And he showed up at our doorstep so many times because I wouldn't get off the phone. I was talking on the phone long distance and wouldn't accept his emergency breakthrough. Or he would show up and say, why didn't you answer the phone? I don't have to answer the phone. He would threaten her. He would call and threaten her. And he would say horrible things. He tried to corner her and tried to take their son one time. Mind you, he never gave a dime to her. He never helped with diapers. He never helped with food. He never helped with anything. And then he would show up randomly and be like, I'm taking my son. No, actually, you're not. And we would stop him because he didn't even have a place to live. And we would be like, no, you're not taking him. And he would start a fight. And he actually truly believed that if he called the police, that he would have me arrested and say that I kidnapped him, that I kidnapped his child that was living in my home while he was standing on my property. This is how deranged he was. And he actually did call the police one time, and they showed up, and they came onto the property, and they were like, April, what do you want us to do? I said, get him off my property. I don't want him here. And then he got mad, and he wanted to argue with the police, and they were like, look, you can leave or we can take you. And so he finally left. There were so many times that it was just awful, some of the things she had to endure. And then they had their second son. A lot of things happened there too. She lived with us several times, I'll put it that way. And then they had a daughter. A lot of things happened through there. Eventually, things worked out and they got married. He never held down a real job, not for very long. He got one good job. Well, he got a couple of good jobs, but one that he worked his butt off to get. And then he hurt his ankle. He was very unstable when it came to a lot of things. And then all of a sudden he stopped taking his medicine and he started becoming delusional, and he was constantly fighting with her, and he always picked on the youngest son. I can remember so many times that I would see him just saying horrible things to the youngest son. And I mean, it was awful stuff. And there was just a lot. And he would call me and say horrible things about his wife. And you need to get this blankety blank and tell her to, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, you need to stop. Are your children sitting there? Yeah, you need to stop. You don't talk like that in front of your kids about their mother. And he didn't care. He would still do it. And she endured a lot of abuse. And don't get me wrong, I mean, she did her share of yelling too, and she did her share of screaming too, and she did fight back. But towards the end, it got to the point to where he was so delusional that he claimed she held him at gunpoint for like 2 weeks or something like that, and wouldn't let him leave the house, yet he'd been on Facebook. Mind you, she's like not even 5 feet tall. He's like 6'2". He's very big. He probably weighed 260 something pounds. And she's like barely 5 feet tall. And she held him at gunpoint. He claimed to be the head of the militia. Mind you, she does not know how to use a gun. she held him, Mr. Head of the Militia, at gunpoint for 2 weeks. Yeah, I'm thinking not. And then it got to the point that she was putting rat poisoning on tortillas at Walmart that he went and bought. So apparently she had organized it with the manager at Walmart or something, where the rat poisoning was in the tortillas that she did. He went to Walmart and bought these tortillas that had the rat poisoning on them and was secretly poisoning these tortillas that he was buying. And she was killing him that way. And that's how he got cancer all of a sudden. And now, mind you, my dad had been diagnosed with cancer. So all of a sudden he had cancer. And then he had a heart attack because of her. Now, mind you, there are no records of him being in the hospital for any of this. None. And he had to have all like a surgery, and he had to have this, and he had to have that. And keep in mind, he would say the hospital, he would say he was in there, he was on her insurance still. There are no records of him being in the hospital, not one. But in his mind, he believes this. She had me on the phone, and I heard every word, where he would come in the middle of the night, screaming his head off, and woke everyone in the house up, just so he could make her mad and not let her sleep. And she was begging him, just let me sleep, just let me sleep. I need to work tomorrow, because he didn't have a job. She's the only one that worked, the only one that supported the family. So he would just scream at the top of his lungs. And all she was like, please just let me go to sleep. And you could hear their daughter, Dad, shut up. I have to go to school in the morning. He didn't care. As long as he was hurting her, he didn't care. It was bad. I mean, it was bad. And then finally, she left. And then he claimed she abandoned him. Well, the divorce went through, and she gave him everything. She was like, I don't want nothing. I'm done. Like, I don't care. I don't want it. And then, of course, she was still responsible for the house, but he was living in it, so she was like, nope, not paying for it. She got on with her life. She grew. She had to learn to love herself. She had to learn to get through the trauma and the sadness and the depression, and she had to learn to get over the abuse and the PTSD and all the problems that happened. He, however, was angry every day, and he posted stuff on Facebook how he was going to kill all of us, and he was going to shoot us dead and let us bleed out all over his yard, and he was going to do this to us. And when I say us, I mean me, my mom, my dad, everybody, because we didn't believe what he said. And so he was angry at us, and he immediately made us an enemy, and so now he was after us. So then all this went on for a long time, until he would call me and threaten me, and I just told him, you know where I live. You have my address, you know where I live. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm not scared of you. If you want to come out here, you know where I live. And he never did, obviously. He would tell me how much he hated me, and he wanted to spit on my grave, and I'd just tell him I still love you. Just because I don't believe you doesn't mean I don't love you. And And I would tell him, you know, I wish you would go get help. My mom and dad tried getting him help. They would take him to get help, and then he would sign himself out. All he needed to do was just get back on his medication and just do something, but he wouldn't. And then he went into hiding, and nobody knew where he was because he was stalking her. And it turned into a big mess, and then we had not talked to him in probably 2 years. He went into hiding, and then the next thing I know, I see on the news that the area that he was staying in, someone had been shot, and I messaged one of his friends, and I said, please tell me that's not my brother. And he said, hold on, and he texted somebody that lived there, and he was like, yeah, I'm sorry, that is your brother. So we lost him this year, just a couple months ago. Very sad, because his kids, he did not have a good relationship with his kids. I guess right before he got shot, he was going to make amends with his kids. He had planned on going and seeing his kids and making amends with them. And he was very excited about it. So that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about now after that long ass story that I just told. Because when it comes to family, and it comes to, I'm sorry, my face itches. When it comes to family, you're not always going to like everybody in your family. And that